of nature, what's happening to our bodies and brains when we're exposed to the natural world, and what happens when we are not exposed, and we go through something called nature deficit disorder. So I'll give you something just to start with. If I can now figure out how to click the, that. Oh. Okay, wait, let's see if this works. Okay, that was quick. But how does that make you feel? Do you feel relaxed? You also almost smell the air. You almost taste that brine. It's really interesting how when you just view something that's so beautiful, it almost envelopes you. And your body is there. Even though we're not there, we can kind of feel it and sense it. And it's really exquisite what happens to the human body when we're exposed to natural elements. What's really interesting, I'm bringing this up because all we need is 40 seconds of looking at the natural world or a picture of nature, and it relaxes the prefrontal cortex. 40 seconds is all it takes. And that's because we're so inclined to be a part of the natural world, we almost forgot how important that aspect is. So there's a great landmark study with Dr. Roger Ulrich, who had incredible years of, this was years of study, but it came out in 1984. They put gallbladder surgery patients, one view was viewing nature, and the other was a brick wall. And this was many, many cases of putting these people and patients in one room versus the other. And the studies were astounding that those that viewed nature needed less medication, they were released earlier, and they were kinder to the medical staff, which is really, really important. So these little tiny micro doses of nature really make such a huge impact. And it's not just reading the data for me, it's really personal. So this is my twin sister, and she is in a wheelchair, but for my entire life, every time I get to bring her outside, this is what she looks like. She can't stop laughing and smiling, and she's just joyful just to be outside because she's in a group home. She's been in a group home since we were 2 years old. She's not able to walk, and she's relied on someone else her entire life to bring her outside. So I always say that nature is a human right because she just, that ever-presence of, wow, this feels so good, and she's just, like we all are when we go to beautiful places like being here, we're just joyful because it's so beautiful and it's so exquisite. So, hi, this is me. This is the much younger me and then another younger version of me. But the reason I'm here is to give you a little background. As I was saying, I had a company called Beauty Bar that I started back in 1997. And there's an idea to take beauty out of a department store setting. So this is the pre-Sephora and pre-Ulta days. And I was a makeup artist at the time. And I had a TV segment talking about makeup that people had not heard of. So people would say, why are you talking about Bobby Brown, the rap star? And it's actually about a makeup artist. So I had this idea, if I could educate people on this TV station, but then sell them products in a store, I wonder if I could do that. So I did. And everyone told me it was the dumbest idea they'd ever heard, that no one would ever leave a department store to go shopping for beauty or makeup. And I love when people say you can't do it because I really want to do it. And so I opened my first store in Florida in 1997, 1998 timeframe, and I grew the business, and that was one of my locations there in the bottom right. And I had this idea, I wanted to really bring a beautiful space into a location. And everyone I talked to, I was really young, I was in my 20s, and everyone I talked to said, you're doing it all wrong, you're paying way too much attention on your space, and not enough attention on the square footage of how much you're selling. And I just thought, no, I really want people to feel good. I want people just to be here and just, I didn't care if it was women or men or young or old, I wanted everyone to feel welcome. So I created spaces that felt good to me. They were green, there's a lot of wood, a lot of slate, a lot of nature indoors. So we're gonna talk a lot about that, but that's how I got started. And I sold the company in 2010, Amazon now owns. I started a few other beauty brands since then. But in 2016, there's this revelation for me. I was doing a lot of walks in Central Park. I live in New York City. I just say I'm a simple girl from the Bronx who loves the outdoors and always has. And I started understanding that people never got outside, and especially in New York City. No one ever wants to go outside because it's just too hard. I don't want to go out, it's too hard to walk that far or whatever. And every person I talked to kept saying, oh, I'd love to go outside, but I don't have time, and I go on the weekends. And I thought, wow, people really are so separate from the natural world. They're considering it for just something other than themselves. It's something to do on the weekend, it's something to do after work if they can. And that really shocked me. And so I went down the rabbit hole, as you guys were saying as well. You start going down this deep, deep rabbit hole, like, oh, there's something here, and there's a reason why we love it, but why aren't we actually using the natural world to help us feel better, to be more reconnected to ourselves and to one another? And that's when I started these studies. So I now am a faculty advisor at the UPenn Center for Neuroaesthetics, as well as the Brain Health Initiative, which is a living lab under Harvard and Mass General. Because I really wanted the science and the data to why nature is important to our ever-changing world and our environment, and our relationship to one another, because we do become more empathetic. We are kinder when there's more nature involved. So that's how I got here today, and that's why I'm talking to you, and I'm just so excited because you are my people. You get it? Because there are a lot of rooms I go to, and it's just, they just don't even, they're not connected yet. They don't really know, but I know you guys do. So I'll go on. So this is the sad part. We are spending over 93% of our time indoors, and this space looks really sad to me. I had to use it because I thought this is actually what many, many offices look like. And this stat of 93% of our time indoors, that's pre-pandemic. So I know those numbers have really changed since then. And what's so staggering is the fact that we were not evolved out inside. We are outdoor creatures that were forced indoors, and we created the greatest migration indoors during the Industrial Revolution. And since then, it's even gotten worse and worse because we're so comfortable. We talked about this last night. We're so comfortable because everything's being delivered to us. We don't have to go outside. We don't have to live or leave our quarters. And it's not really helpful, and it's not really healthy. And when we have spaces like this, when it's just devoid of feeling and emotion and color, it makes me just sad looking at it. So there are lots of environments like this. So how do we change that? And we all have the tools here because you are all leaders in the space to really make change for your clients, your staff, your families, and your community. Because once we learn these tips and tricks and techniques, you can't unsee it. And then you think, I have to be a part of this, I have to do more of this everywhere I go. So there's something called the attention restoration theory, and this is really fascinating. Again, there's lots of really cool landmark studies that started in the 80s. So again, we are so task-driven, and our species is not very good at multitasking. Like you're saying, we try and do all these things, but the brain is really overloaded and can't do all the things. I always say our brains are pretty much like our open tabs, like on my computer right now. I have way too many tabs running, and it always says shut down, shut down, shut down, and I never do. So our brains are the same exact way. So ART really is just the idea of taking your brain away from the task at hand and looking elsewhere. Looking at a rainbow, looking at a cloud, looking at the leaves, looking at something other than all the tasks, because again, we're so overloaded. If we can just take a step back and look at something else and just say, oh, that's beautiful. You're focusing on it, but you're not worrying and you're not consumed of how do I analyze that, or how do I fix it, or what do I have to do for it. It's more of this presence that really makes you think, oh, that's really beautiful. I can feel good in this moment just looking at something else just for a minute. Just takes a minute to really look. So if you're interested, there's some great documents around ART. So I'm going to give you another little moment to look at this. So the cognitive function, this is what's really hardening us, is the fact our cognitive load is so heavy because we do have so many tasks. And so many people are so stressed because we are thinking, I have to do this, 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 and this all day long. And it's really all-consuming. So how do we think about ways to just kind of take nature breaks? And what are these nature breaks going to do for our bodies and brains is really, really powerful. And I'll kind of go into that. And I'll give you another little moment of the Catskill Mountains for a second, because as you all know, it's really, really beautiful. But again, these little tiny microdoses of nature, again, really help heal us. And they just make us more centered and present and kind of like let us go for a second and not think about all the tasks at hand. Okay, I'm sure some of you have heard of what phytoncides are. Does anyone know what phytoncides are? A few possibly, yes? Okay, so I was fascinated when I started studying this whole idea of our body's connection to nature around us. So phytoncides are the natural aerosols that conifer trees are releasing. So think of pine trees, cedar trees. And I always say, never underestimate the power of a pine, because when we walk around these pine trees, these trees are releasing these aerosols called phytoncides. And they're releasing them to ward off disease and illness. So it's kind of they're bathing themselves continuously in these aerosols. We cannot smell it, see it, or taste it, but we're inhaling them every time we're around these conifer trees. And what's so fascinating is the fact that when we are around these phytoncides, we're exposed to them, it activates something called our NK cells, which are natural killer cells. And the cool part about that, it actually wards off disease and illness within us. We don't even have to think about it. We don't even know it's there. We're just amongst the pines. Whenever you see a pine tree, linger for a little bit longer. I always say it's our daily multivitamin we didn't even know we were taking. So just spend some time in the pines. And I walk in Central Park every day. So now I'm seeing more and more people, young and old, just sitting around the pine trees. I'm like, yes, I know what you're doing. There's more people, again, like this. We're never taught. I've never been taught about the nature connection to human health. I don't think many of us have been. But it's almost common sense if you think about it, but we've been so separate from it. But it really is common sense, and the more we learn, and the more studies and science around it really helps us bring this knowledge to our clients, to our staff, and to everyone we can. And I get very excited about this. So this is also very interesting too. Anyone else like the sound of rain? Yeah, I love the sound of rain, and I never really thought about the difference between noise and sound. And if some of you know me, and this is actually my home. I live in a tent for 4 months every summer, and that's my home. And I love the sound of rain on a tent. It's my absolute favorite sound. So it depends on who you are, where you come from, but sound and noise is very, very different. So I think about that sound that I love of rain on a tent because it's so soothing. Then I go back home to my New York City apartment and I have the jackhammer starting at 7 a.m. and I have the honking horns and everything else that's around us. That's so distracting. But what do we do to kind of fix and also kind of block out the noise and bring in more sound is really, really important. So what does sound do? So we think about nature sounds are really, really impactful. Even bird song, and what's really fascinating, there's some new studies that are being done in Maryland with school kids, as well, like young children in elementary school. They're putting some students with bird song. Bird song is not loud, it's very, very small, you can't hear it, but it's there. Those students with bird song in the classrooms are doing better than those without. So it's just these constant studies are being done because, again, we've been so separate, but when we reintroduce sounds of nature, it really kind of changes the landscape of the space that we're in. I actually have on my TV in my apartment, I have my YouTube on, and I play fireplace. So I can see the fireplace, I can hear it, I can't smell it, but at least there's some analogs of nature that I can see, and I can almost smell it. If I light my candle that's a campfire, I can also smell it as well. But these kind of like little things that we do in our houses, our homes, our apartments, our spas. I mean, the spa industry has been doing this for so long, but sometimes we do, we don't even know why, because again, this is our mammalian brain. We always say in the science industry is the fact that we have these old brains in very new bodies, and the brains are not able to keep up to what's happening to our environments these days. So how do we bring back these old analogs of where we came from into the human space right now is important. But it's also really, really compelling to how it changes how we feel in our spaces. So I'm seeing a lot more homes that are talking about how we put those little sound machines. Remember the old-fashioned sound machines we used to have? And there's so many great new ones these days. I'll mention one, I don't work with them right there. There's a company called Morphe. So Morphe has these great, you were going to know that one. So there's some really good ones that kind of really envelope you and bring you to different places that make you feel comforted. So again, these little tiny things that we can do at home that don't cost a lot of money. You can do it on your Alexa device, your Google devices. It doesn't take a lot of money to do it, but it does change the environment that we're in. Okay, so I'm assuming some of you have heard about biophilia. Anyone know what biophilia is? So biophilia is our innate connection to life and all living things. And it's really about how the brain perceives spaces and places. And again, most of the time, this is not something we are actively thinking about. It's just our brains in the space, and it's just doing what it's always done. So this biophilia is like, how do we love the things that are around us? How do we love the living life, the plants, the trees, the animals, the creatures? Not necessarily the bugs, but there are things around us that we really are drawn to, even when we think about dogs and cats and birds, because that's where we evolved from, was again with these animals outside. Of course, everyone's been more, we're better together than we were like thousands of years ago, but now we're all together, and it's really, when we have the lack of animals in our lives, it really is also a form of separateness from the natural world. So that's why we say dogs are so good for you. Animals are so good for you because you're petting the creature, you're loving the creature, and this creature is loving you back. It's really compelling. So biophilic design, and we talked about Beauty Bar a while ago, and everyone told me that I was doing it all wrong. I didn't have verbiage for what I was doing, I just knew it felt right. So now we have this great, compelling story about what biophilic design is, and that's really bringing nature inside. And nature inside for human health, and the more we understand like why that's important, then there's that ability to then share that knowledge with everyone else, and we want to protect what we love. And if we are so separate from the natural world and we're not going outside and we're not spending time in it, we're not able to protect that which we love. So the more we know, the more we want to really share that and take care of each other. And biophilic design is, again, bringing those sounds inside, textures. This is even just a simple video of the wood features, the stone, everything that we bring outside in really is going to help us. And it's funny because everyone's like, oh, that's something nice. That's good. No, it's not nice. It's health. It's literal human health. And the more we understand and the more we bring inside, it really changes our environment around us and the people within it. So Bill Browning is a gentleman who works for a company called Terrapin Bright Green. So he and some others came together and formed this 15 patterns of biophilic design. I can share that with you later, but these are all some of the patterns that we can involve and bring indoors that are really, really interesting. We think about fractal patterns and how much we love. The human brain loves fractal patterns. We don't walk down the street and say, oh, that's a nice fractal pattern. It's just, again, our brain is just at ease when we are around these patterns. And also, we think about we're trying to create better spaces, again, for schools especially. A lot of schools are now because a lot of the teachers bring down the blinds in the classroom because it might be too much of a glare and too bright in the classroom, or for a spa or hotel. And what we can do is bring down these drapes or blinds, and they can have forms of leaves and branches. So that way, when they do come down, you're gonna see those patterns on the floor. And again, it kind of eases people and relaxes people, and we don't even have to spend that much money. It's just a matter of like understanding these little things that we can do to make our spaces so much better for all. And here's some more right there. There's a great book. Again, I don't work with them, but they are really, really wonderful people. But Nature Inside is really a powerful book and explains all of this and why this is important. Prospect Refuge is really interesting. And of course, awe. When we think about the wonder and awe of the beautiful world, I woke up this morning and I looked out I wanted to see if it was still light out or if it was light yet, and I opened the blinds and the sky was, did anyone else see the sunrise? It was purple. I mean, that is the awe and wonder. You said, oh my God, that is spectacular. Because again, we know that we're never gonna get that moment again. So it's just that this awareness of the presence that we have right now changes our biology and our bodies. And that is something so powerful when we recognize if we give ourselves the grace to just be present in the moment that we're in, that gives us sheer beauty and sheer spectacularness of what life is all about is beauty. So when we think about the gift of what we all do is talk to people and put these beautiful products on our skin, and you can smell those ingredients, you can feel it, and you talk the story of why we're doing it. It is such a powerful, powerful industry that we have. Beauty and spa and understanding that connection, that human connection of feeling and touch. And Christine does such a beautiful job with children, and doing like this power of touch is so important for humans. And especially now, going through COVID, and now in this new world with AI, when things are becoming more, that's a whole other conversation I can talk about later, but I'm doing a deep dive into that. But it's like separateness of the connection to humans. We can't have that. Like when I hug people these days, I will not let go, because I'm so happy to hug people again, and that human connection is so very omnipresent. So again, the beauty industry is so fantastic in the sense that we use the aspects of nature in every single thing we do. We think about the ingredients, the marketing, creating aspiration, inspiration, seasonal activations, all around the beauty of nature. We use nature in every single way to tell our stories. And we're going to talk a lot in the next 2 days about sustainability. But the one thing I always say about sustainability is this is a separate room, of course, but I always say we have to talk about sustainability and nature in the same sentence. Because the biggest part about, if we only talk about sustainability, we can't see, smell, taste, or hear it. So there's no connection, there's no human connection to that bond of like, sustainability? I don't know. I can't see it. I don't know what that means. Is it less plastic? Yes, but there's no connection. But if you also include nature woven into that conversation, It's a deeper, deeper feeling and a deeper, deeper emotion. So I would just try to say, don't forget nature when we talk about sustainability. It's very important. And activating the senses. So this is really big when we talk about our spaces and places where we're selling things. So the studies around retail and nature is really profound. Oh, excuse me. Again, a lot of these studies have been done with terrapin bright green, and because we are not activating senses. I always say we are going through the greatest void of using our senses anymore, because we're not smelling, we're not tasting, we're not seeing our environments, because we're spending so much time indoors. But if you're in a beautiful spa, you get this great, the sounds, the sights, the scents, it's very different. But understand, like, it's actual, a very financial difference when we include nature. I have a lot more studies, but I know we've got limited time I don't want to go over, so I could go on about that alone in so many different ways. But yeah, it's incredible when you actually have people say, oh, I'll spend more money, because they don't even realize the products are the same price or a certain price, but they'll spend more money. And the power of wood is really, really incredible to me too, because I know I love, anyone else like fireplaces? Like fires and bonfires? Yeah. So it's this human, again, we're not thinking about it, but we formed our relationships around a bonfire. Like, this is our, like, fires. This is how we came into being, is around fires. And we just love that community and that communalness of the fire. Not only that, when we see wood, we also know that wood was alive. That was a living thing. So again, we're not saying, oh, living, but it is, we see the wood, okay, living, good. So we knew it was something that we were always around. And not only that, wood was something that gave us shelter. It gave us meat, so we were able to cook when we were hunter-gatherers. And also warded us off from any kind of altercation with another animal, saber-toothed tiger, what have you. But these aspects of wood really did so many things for us. That's why when we see wood, or we're around wood, we just say, oh, that feels good. And there are different variations of the wood that we do like, but it is really compelling. When you think about all the spa spaces and stores, there's always beautiful aspects of wood, and there's a reason for it. And we'll see a lot more products that are coming out now as well with packaging that you can really feel. You can almost feel the textures of wood. You can feel the glass. It's just this weightiness to it that really, when we are around these things, these environments, it just feel good in our hands. And the tactileness, I always say, we're so used to, as human beings, we're on our laptops so much these days that we are losing our sense to, like, touch and feel things, instead of these, like, we're just on our keyboards all the time. So how do we have that human touch, which the spa industry really gets to do in such meaningful and powerful ways? And this is just one aspect of a retail store, which use actual pieces of wood, which were really beautiful. So I didn't really know a lot about dynamic or static habitats. I never really thought about it, but it really makes a lot of sense to me now when you think about, oh yeah, dynamic and static. What does that even mean, and how does that impact my day-to-day? So a static habitat is really just, you're in a space, it's always going to be the same, the shadows, the light, there's nothing really different. There's lots of noise, you know about it, but a dynamic habitat is like the stimuli that you weren't expecting. It might be changing. It might be a breeze coming through that you're like, oh, that scent reminded me of my grandmother, or it takes you back to something else. So these dynamic environments are really important for us to also be a part of. So we can have static and we can have dynamic. And here's another one. The terrain is flat, so you go to an office, you kind of know there's really no up and down in the terrain, but the dynamic. But again, we need both. So you think about when you're on the beach all day, aren't you exhausted after a day on the beach? You're just wiped out. It's because it's such a dynamic environment that the wind is blowing, there's that air, it's just constantly in your face. You're tired because it is that dynamicness, so you need the static as well, just to kind of soothe the body, relax the body, go back to that kind of, okay, now I can kind of go into my next thing I need to do. But we need both to really thrive and flourish. And it's also an aspect of how do we think about those who are neurodiverse, neurodivergent. My twin sister is neurodivergent, but in a very extreme way. But there's also people with autism, ADHD. So how do we treat these people? And everyone is the same. So the spa is the one singular industry that really knows how to do this in such a powerful way, because the sounds are always so much softer. There's so much more nature involved. The scent is so much more powerful because it's not overpowering. It's beautiful, it's like sublime, and it's just a space where everyone feels, I can breathe a little bit kinder, a little bit nicer. It just feels so much better. So when we think about these environments really help us thrive, much more so. So I always do these walks as well, so just kind of like ideas of like why I like to lead. I lead wellness walks in Central Park every day for hotel groups, for individuals and corporations. Because again, I'm trying to drag people out. I say that Central Park is my largest living lab because I get to feel and see exactly how, like, some people are like, ugh, I have to go for a walk because my company told me to. But it's really fun to see them say, oh, I didn't think about that. I didn't know how these things would feel on myself. I forgot about feeling the breeze on my skin. I didn't know that would affect me. And I didn't know, like, taking my sunglasses off and letting some sunlight in. So the morning light, the circadian rhythm, how do we really help set up our days for human flourishing? I think that's the key, is how do we help our clients, our staff, our families, our communities set up for human flourishing? And we really, really need that. So never underestimate the power of a walk, never underestimate the power of a pine. These like little tiny micro doses really make a huge, huge difference. And that's it. And if you ever have any questions, please feel free to email me. I'm on Instagram all the time, so if you want to ever